For years now, there's been a problem quietly growing inside the trucking industry. It's something most drivers are aware of, many carriers have been affected by, and yet it's remained surprisingly difficult to control. The issue is known as chameleon carriers, and according to new information coming out of the Department of Transportation, meaningful action may finally be on the way. To understand why this matters, it helps to first understand what a chameleon carrier actually is. In simple terms, a chameleon carrier is a trucking company that shuts down, either voluntarily or after being forced out by regulators, and then reappears almost immediately under a new identity. The name changes, the DOT or MC number changes, sometimes even the listed address or company officer changes, but in reality it's often the same operation, using the same trucks, the same drivers, and the same business practices that caused problems in the first place. In many cases, these companies shut down after accumulating safety violations, poor inspection records, or fraud-related issues. Instead of fixing those problems, they simply restart under a new registration and continue operating as if nothing happened. On paper, they look like a brand new company. In practice, they're anything but. This has been a known issue in trucking for years, but enforcement has struggled to keep up. That may now be changing. According to a recently leaked internal memo from the Department of Transportation, federal regulators are preparing to introduce a new system designed specifically to identify and disrupt these chameleon carriers before they can continue operating under new identities. The memo outlines a data-driven approach that would analyze patterns within FMCSA registration data. Rather than relying solely on individual inspections or complaints, the system would look at broader behavioral trends that often indicate fraudulent or high-risk operations. These patterns include shared physical addresses between multiple carriers, repeated use of the same phone numbers or email addresses, rapid turnover of DOT registrations, inconsistent fleet reporting, and clusters of newly formed companies operating out of the same locations. When combined, these indicators can reveal when a company is likely attempting to hide behind a new identity. The goal is to create what the department describes as a severity risk matrix, essentially a scoring system that flags carriers whose behavior closely matches known chameleon patterns. Once flagged, those carriers would be prioritized for audits, investigations, and enforcement actions. To understand why this matters, it helps to look at real-world examples. In one case, highlighted in the report, a carrier operating under one name was found to be directly connected to two other companies through identical mailing and physical addresses, down to the same apartment number. While the names and registrations were different, the operation behind them appeared to be the same. In another example, a company with a poor safety record shut down, only to reappear months later under a new name, operating from the same location and with the same equipment. In some instances, companies that had their authority revoked were later found operating again despite having inactive DOT and MC numbers. In one documented case, a truck belonging to a carrier that had been shut down twice was still hauling freight months later, even though it technically no longer had legal authority to operate. These situations raise serious concerns, not just about regulatory enforcement, but about safety and fairness across the industry. From a safety standpoint, the issue is obvious. When a carrier with a history of violations is allowed to continue operating under a new identity, the underlying risks remain. The same equipment, the same management practices, and the same behaviors are still in place. The only thing that has changed is the name on the door. From a business standpoint, the impact is just as significant. Chameleon carriers often undercut legitimate operators by running at unsustainable rates or ignoring compliance costs. This drives prices down across the market and makes it harder for honest carriers to compete. Over time, it erodes trust between carriers, brokers, and shippers, and contributes to rising insurance premiums for everyone. The leaked memo suggests that regulators are now taking this problem more seriously than ever before. Under the proposed system, the Department of Transportation would use data analytics to identify patterns associated with fraudulent or high-risk behavior. Carriers flagged by the system could face increased scrutiny, additional verification steps, or targeted enforcement actions. At the same time, officials acknowledge that this approach must be handled carefully. There are legitimate situations where multiple carriers operate from the same address, share equipment, or lease space in the same yard. The goal, according to the memo, is not to punish honest operators, but to identify cases where multiple warning signs point to deliberate attempts to bypass regulations. Still, the changes could have noticeable effects across the industry. Smaller carriers may face additional verification when applying for authority. Applications could take longer to process. Companies sharing addresses or equipment may need to provide more documentation. In some cases, carriers could be flagged for review simply because their operating profile resembles that of previously identified Chameleon carriers. According to reporting from FreightWaves, regulators plan to use this risk-based model to prioritize enforcement rather than apply blanket restrictions. The intent is to focus resources on the operators most likely to pose safety or compliance risks, while allowing legitimate carriers to continue operating with minimal disruption. For many in the industry, this shift is long overdue. Chameleon carriers have been linked to increased insurance costs, reduced trust between brokers and carriers, and serious safety concerns. They also distort the market by allowing operators who ignore regulations to compete against those who follow the rules. The hope is that a data-driven system will finally give regulators the tools they need to identify these operations early, before they can cause further harm. How quickly this system will be implemented remains unclear. The memo suggests that development is already underway, but large-scale changes to federal enforcement systems take time. Still, the fact that the issue is being addressed at this level signals a significant shift in how the industry may be regulated going forward. For now, carriers are watching closely. If the system works as intended, it could help clean up long-standing problems and create a more level playing field. If implemented poorly, it could also create new challenges for legitimate operators who already face enough hurdles. Either way, one thing is clear. The era of Chameleon carriers operating unnoticed may finally be coming to an end, and the trucking industry is about to feel the effects. As the trucking industry continues to evolve, stories like this are becoming more common and more important to understand. Behind every regulation change, every market shift, and every headline, there are real drivers, real businesses, and real consequences that often go unnoticed. That's what this channel is here to cover. If you want clear, straightforward reporting on what's actually happening in trucking, from industry changes and regulations to the trends shaping the future of transportation, this channel is built for that purpose. No hype, no spin, just the stories that matter and the context behind them. If you found this breakdown helpful, consider subscribing. New reports are posted regularly, covering the issues that impact drivers, carriers, and the industry as a whole. And as always, thanks for watching.